Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Jennifer Surtees, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Warrant Officer Nikolai Roth. We are honoured to acknowledge General Sir Mark Carleton-Smith, United Kingdom Chief of General Staff, and Lady Catherine Carleton-Smith, Lieutenant General Rick Burr, Chief of Army Australia, and Mrs. Bronwyn Burr, and the accompanying delegation. We also warmly welcome the Naval College of Pakistan and the accompanying delegation. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of the following school: from Victoria, Wodonga South Primary School. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Students, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Horace John Towers. Horace Towers was born in Cootamundra, New South Wales, the oldest son of John and Catherine Towers. Horace and his two brothers and three sisters grew up in Stocking Bingle near Cootamundra, where they attended the local public school. Horace went on to work in a local district as a farm labourer. Little else is known of his life before enlisting in the Australian Imperial Force, which he did in July 1916 at the age of 28. Horace Towers underwent a period of training in Australia in preparation for being sent overseas. A few weeks after he had enlisted, one of his young brothers, Frank, went to visit him. At some point during the visit, Frank contracted meningitis and he died suddenly after being taken for medical treatment. It is not clear whether or not Horace was granted leave to attend his brother's funeral. Private Horace Towers left Australia for active service overseas on board the troop ship Port Napier in November 1916. Although he was posted to reinforcements for the 14th Battalion at the time, shortly after his arrival in France, he was transferred to the 29th Battalion. The 29th Battalion had a relatively quiet time in the early months of 1917. Missing the heavy fighting around Bullecourt, on the 26th of September 1917, the battalion took part in an attack at Polygon Wood, not far from the Belgian town of Ypres. Advancing behind a curtain of shell fire, the infantry took most of their objectives in short order, although the Australians suffered a considerable number of casualties in the process. One of those wounded was Private Towers. He was evacuated with wounds to the face and head and eventually sent to a hospital on the French coast. It took some weeks before he was well enough to return to his battalion, which he did in November 1917. On the 8th of August, the British opened their Great Offensive of 1918 with the Battle of Amiens. The 29th Battalion took part in the advance that followed, rotating in and out of the line and steady pushing the Germans back. Private Towers remained with his battalion in the field until the Australian Corps was withdrawn to a quiet sector to recuperate after hard weeks of fighting and to reorganise in the face of high casualties. As part of this process, Private Towers was transferred to the 32nd Battalion. A month after his transfer, Horace Towers caught the flu and was sent to hospital. His condition worsened into pneumonia and he simply failed to recover. On the 11th of November 1918, a day on which so many were celebrating the armistice, Private Horace John Towers died of bronchopneumonia in hospital in Abbeville. The local newspaper in Australia recorded that it is sad to think that he had fought so long and died in the very day the war was practically over. Today, Horace Towers lies in the Abbeville Communal Cemetery extension under the words, "O Sacred Heart of Jesus, have mercy on our dear son, rest in peace." He was 30 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Horace John Towers, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.